Hello everyone, how are you going? And welcome to Non-Canadians. What have you always wanted to ask a Canadian? Something that I'm sure all of us just have lurking in the back of our mind, just something about the Great White North or hockey or pretend, whatever it may be, they're just buried back there, just waiting for the opportunity to ask.
Non-Canadians of Reddit, what questions have you always wanted to ask a Canadian? Are Canadian geese as vicious as I've been led to believe? They are
Apparently
demon
so.
spawn.
Alright.
How is it with the language border in your country? Are there many people that speak French and English? I grew up in Vancouver and pretty much no one spoke French unless they were from Quebec or France.
Okay.
The French taught in school was super basic, and if the student didn't make an effort they forget. These people from a lot of different provinces. I speak French because I was interested in learning and took lessons outside of school.
Now that one right there could certainly cause a bit of a stir because, as they say, pretty much no one spoke French unless they were from Quebec. However, being from Quebec certainly encompasses a lot of people, and so do a lot of people speak it or do a lot of people not speak it? I understand that the rest of Canada doesn't really have anything to do with it, but I don't know if you can say that no one speaks it, because I've certainly heard that if you go to some places, especially in Quebec, it's basically the only language that they speak. And not even from a, oh sorry, I don't speak English and I don't understand what you're saying. No, there is actually legislation and all these different things surrounding French and English, and that's why Canada is really strange in that regard about how those mingling mixes.
What is the most dangerous creature in Canada? I asked an Alaskan if it was polar
Sure,
bears, and they got real serious and quiet and said, moose. Moose 100%.
True.
They can murder you viscously in so many ways. Let's say you hit a moose with your car. You will knock its feet out, but their huge heavy meat sack bodies will fall onto your windshield and you will die from impact.
Yeah.
Do the Mounties always get their man? How often do you see a Mountie? They only really wear the red uniform with a Stetson on parade or special occasions.
Right.
When they're just being police officers, they look like regular cops. You see them all the time just as police officers, but where I am on the East Coast, we only see them in the dress uniform on special occasions like Canada Day or Remembrance Day.
Well, that has certainly cleared a few things up for me, because I had no idea that they weren't always in red. I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't think it's the worst idea to be in red, because then at least you can see them if you need to get their attention for whatever reason. You go, oh, basically wearing high vis. But then again, I can certainly understand why you wouldn't want to be constantly wearing your special outfit. I mean, that's just reserved for the Queen or the King's Guard. Either way, that certainly does clear it up for me, but I do also love the fact that this person apparently knew enough about Canada to know that they are colloquially called Mounties, but then also didn't know enough just to be able to answer their own question.
I've heard that all the evil in Canada was removed from people and took the form of geese. That's why Canadians are so nice and geese are pure evil. Is this true?
Not a bad
This
theory.
makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, to be fair.
Is it cold there? In Edmonton it is freezing right now, like
Literally.
minus 42°C. What are the insulting stereotypes of people in each of the provinces? Only one I ever heard was that allegedly everyone in Newfoundland was conceived on a fishing boat. It'd be a lot to name each province territory, so I'll name a few. Ontarians are the center of the universe and stuck up. Albertans are rednecks. Quebecers are racist, more holier than thou than Ontarians. Newfoundlanders are so nice but hard to understand.
There's always got to be something. No country can just be a nice, peaceful country domestically, can it? As you can bet your bottom dollar that Australia experiences exactly the same thing, especially on the East Coast. I guess then going down to Tassie, oh, you know what? Actually, no, I take that back. I think everywhere kind of gets it except for the Northern Territory. But to be fair, there's no one even up there to insult in the first place. But look, it is also portrayed throughout all of US media, just all the differences between the states, and some of them are actually quite big. And so now I'm wondering, is it just a big country thing? But no, because the UK also has it. So I don't know what it is. I just never heard, let's say, the Scandi countries, they don't seem to have problems internally, just between each other.
How often do you actually see a moose? And what's the actual plural of moose? Meese.
Moose? No,
Does your
it's
money
not.
really smell like
No.
maple syrup?
Yes.
The $100 bills do, but only if they're fresh from the mint. If they've been in circulation, then they just smell like pockets.
But are you sure about that one? Because I've definitely heard about both sides of the equation. Some people saying, no, that's ridiculous. It's a myth. It would never be a thing. And other people going, well, you know what? I actually think that a lot of them do. And then maybe that's just because they've just handled maple syrup and then they're just using them again. Or maybe they're just ballers and they're only handling the hundreds. Either way, I've definitely heard a lot of people say, well, apparently they do. And then I just feel compelled to come back to this one because there is no way. I refuse to believe that the plural of moose is meese. Meese? No, it doesn't even sound right. It is definitely just moose. Plural of moose. What is it going to be? Yeah, exactly. Moose right there. The only one I will give, however, is what is the bunch of mooses called? And okay, it's called a herd. Sometimes they get some random ones, but that one at least is just straightforward. It's a herd of moose.
Is everyone as nice as the legends say? We've got our fair share of buttholes.
Yeah.
Canadians can be more polite than Americans, but that doesn't make them nicer.
Interesting.
Do you French kiss or just kiss? Depends if it's my wife or my pet moose.
Or Quebec.
Is it popular to Photoshop a marijuana leaf into your flag instead of the maple leaf? Yup, and in stores everywhere they sell Canadian ganja flags.
I've never Wow, okay, I've never even heard that being brought up in all the how to be Canadian videos, how to be anything videos, and honestly I'm quite surprised because it does seem as though it's a fairly straightforward leap, and for that reason I can imagine that a lot of people in a whole range of year groups at school have gotten in a lot of trouble over the entire course of their schooling career.
What are Canadian-s opinions of people from England, UK? Love the accent. Hate the exchange rate. Sorry that this isn't a question, but rather a tribute to Canadians. We have traveled many times to Toronto for long weekend stays from Cleveland to see shows, visit museums, and indulge a bit in the huge cultural mix. We always felt welcomed and are impressed with the entertainment, restaurants, and the people of this city and beyond. We always feel safe. Once, when we'd taken public transportation to the vicinity of Casa Loma, we stood at an intersection trying to figure out what direction to go to the castle, and a bus driver got off his bus to ask if he could help us. I was so floored by the kind gesture. I wrote the transportation company to give my appreciation for what I felt was going above and beyond ordinary behavior. On another occasion, we had gone by rail to the Ford Center to see Showboat, either coming or going. We weren't sure which direction train we should take, and were just talking among ourselves. Some citizens noticed and asked if they could help, which they did. These experiences were so positively different from what I personally experienced in New York City. Just last fall, we drove from Fort Francis to Banff, Jasper, Vancouver, and Victoria. Again, we were impressed by the helpful and friendly, safe experience we had while traveling, by all those we encountered in the cities as well in rural areas. We chatted with men who weren't tourists along the way and felt an immediate connection despite what difficulties each country is having with unsavory politics. Thank you for being interesting, kind and concerned citizens.
Oh, geez, that is a hell of a paragraph, but definitely, like they said, a tribute to Canadians because that was just full of, well, positive energy, basically. I mean, perhaps that's because the usual New York City tanks were just completely overflowing with positive energy just by one trip through Canada, and so they went, holy moly, I just gotta get rid of it. I just gotta just tell it to the world. And to be fair, the fact that a bus driver stopped the bus, or I can only hope that they didn't stop the bus just to tell those people, because if I was on the bus, I'm going, can we just go? I mean, yeah, I understand helping them, but to get off the bus, just direct them or something, that seems a little bit overkill. And I also feel like if that was in a wrong country or a different country, telling the company that they worked for could definitely get that person in trouble. So even though this is Canada and I do have high hopes for how that entire situation would have been handled, please just do be careful, because I feel as though that is a number one reason, a number one way people turn from being a good person to a bad person, as they go around just giving out all of this free positive energy, and that is something that they are intrinsically motivated by, but all of a sudden that energy just comes back and bites them in a negative way, and that would really turn you sour really, really quickly.
Okay, so once I went on vacation to Canada, and we went to this big indoor farmers market thing in Vancouver, and there was a stall handing out samples of cups of maple syrup, and everyone we saw was just straight up taking shots of syrup. What the frick was up with that? When we say we like maple syrup, we are not exaggerating.
Fair enough.
How many times, on average, do you apologize a day? Not very often, sorry. Do you miss Gordani? I do. He was so important to Canada that the CBC preempted the Olympics to show the final concert. What is your relationship to the First Nations? Tricky. They face huge amounts of discrimination and racism. Do you ever just stick a straw in a tree and start drinking? Number. We pour the processed syrup in the snow, then roll it up onto a stick. Yummy, twiggy, sugary goodness.
I mean, look, that is certainly one way to describe what they are doing there, and it certainly apparently seems to work pretty well. Sadly, I've never had the pleasure of trying it. However, I do think that the original poster or comment or question should just do a little bit more research into the process of making maple syrup, because it's not as simple as just taking it straight out of the tree. I'm sure a lot of people wish it was, because it's just so much more volume is needed.
Do you guys really say Hooser? Someone told me that was a Minnesota thing, not Canadian, but I think he's wrong. If you want to know more about Canadian dialects, watch some Letterkenny. It pretty much nails the accent from the area I grew up, rural Ontario, which I hear is also common throughout the other provinces. Is your healthcare really as good as Democrats in the US advertise it as? Wait times for non-urgent specialist appointments or MRI scans are pretty long, but if I break my arm I can go to the hospital and not have to worry about paying a cent, or even just basic things like going to the doctor for a funky toe or to refill my birth control prescription.
Funky toe.
Did Trailer Park Boys die for you when Netflix took over like it did for me? Yes, the later seasons are awful, but they will always hold a place in my heart, as the first few seasons are comedy gold and were made in my home province. TPB is pretty much our primary cultural export.
Now look, some people might argue with me and said that it isn't exactly a cultural export, but I would argue the fact that either all dressed or ketchup chips are going to be the major cultural export. I mean, for goodness sake, I heard in another video that $1 billion a day is sold across the entire border, of which, actually, could that be the reason that the USA has a higher obesity rate than Canada? Because the USA already has its own stuff, but then if Canada was just sitting there feeding them all dressed chips all the time, just to make sure that Canada doesn't become #1? No, surely not. The Canadians are too nice for that. They wouldn't dare.
Can you please explain to me what the frick poutine is? What is it supposed to be?
Heart attack.
Poutine is fries with cheese curds covered in gravy, and it is a goddamn delicacy. It has to be cheese curds, they must be squeaky. As for what it's supposed to be, a snack, a meal, depends what you want it to be. Why do you put your milk in bags? That isn't even all of Canada, just in Ontario, maybe Quebec, and maybe the Maritimes. I moved to BC and no bagged milk. We have bagged milk because it is the cheapest way to package it. You have a jug at home that the bag slips into, and then you cut a corner of the bag off to pour it out. Some people cut off both top corners to vent, but most don't. Why is maple syrup so famous? Maple syrup is so important to us because it is a huge thing of pride for our country. Canada produces 85% of the world's maple syrup, and the First Nations here were the first to discover it.
That's pretty cool, actually, and I do love the legacy and the history behind the entire thing. The fact that over generations and generations it was kind of refined into not the product that we get today, but definitely an edible. Going from tree sap to edible is a monumental achievement in its own right, let alone the fact that the end product is just outrageously good. The fact that it's not like, oh yeah, it's edible, but it's so, who cares? It's actually maple syrup, and for goodness sake, the fact that it is more expensive than oil. Like, there's reasons that Canada know what they're doing. 85% of the world's exports, massive amount of reserve. They just got it all on lock, and for good reason, and they do it right. I mean, for goodness sake, you also better hope you do, especially when you put your life on the line in the form of your flag and having a maple leaf dead center, a red one at that, almost syrup colored. That is just seriously putting yourself out there going, we are number one.
Is Canada only considered friendly and sensible because it's only got America as comparison? That is the most accurate thing I've ever heard.
Really?
Is Letterkenny an accurate representation of small-town Canada?
Yeah.
Represent small-town Ontario. Check out Corner Gas for small-town prairies. I was always curious if Canadians are as polite as rumors says. 90% of people here are really nice and would be considered way more polite than people in America, for example. But every now and then you will meet some pretty trash people. Are baby Canadians actually called pucklings? Number, but female hockey groupies are called puck bunnies.
Wait, what? I need time to absorb that, because I have definitely heard of puck bunnies before, and it absolutely caught me off guard the first time I heard it, but to be calling baby Canadians pucklings, I mean, it's not wrong, it's kind of fair. But hey, coming back to this one, as we've already said, and as I'm sure or I hope everyone knows, there are going to be bad people, if you want to call them that, everywhere in the world. No matter where you go, no matter who you talk to, there's going to be some kind of negative interaction. It's just how it is, sadly. And to be fair, it could also just be a perspective-based thing. You know, let's say I'm from Moonland or Jupiter, or whatever it may be, and I just think that bowing just means I'm about to fight you, and then I go to Japan, all of a sudden I'm going to feel very internally attacked, but really it's just completely sweet. It's completely the opposite. And that's not to excuse any of the true bad behavior from the real Rodnecks, you know, be it racism or sexism or anything like that. It's just that people do like to jump the gun a little bit and say that, oh, that country's rude, when really it's just different to what they're used to.
Maybe some Canadian who have visited both know if they think Canada's culture are more European-like or American. Canadian culture is very complex. You have Canadians who descend from Europe, Britain, Africa, etc. There are also natives who descend from, well, natives. There are also the Métis people who are from mixed backgrounds. Canadian culture is so wide and complex that it ain't really comparable to other countries. Do you worship John Candy like a god? Why, yes. Can you guys hear if someone is American? Depends. We can pretty much tell immediately if you are from Jersey, Florida, the South, etc. just from voice, but if you have a more normal whatever that means voice, then it would be way harder to tell. Yeah, you'll like syrup? Yes, we shoot it up like H.
Whoa. Chill out there, Sonny Jim. Holy moly. I mean, I know that I was saying that they knew what they were doing and even the government has reserves on it, but that's going a little bit too far if that's what you're really treating it as. I feel as though that's a serious problem that should be addressed.
Do you guys like those maple leaf cream filled cookies? Heck yeah, those are delicious. Have you had better maple syrup somewhere else? Number, there's no such thing. The Queen is head of state of Canada, so unlike many other countries, on paper nobility is obviously still a thing. But is nobility still a thing in Canada? Like for example in England, is there a Count of Alberta, or a Lord Mayor of Toronto, etc.? We don't royal care about the monarchy here because they do nothing and have political power but just don't use it. I don't think we have lords and stuff, but we do have barons.
Barons? Barons of what? Barons of just general land? What are the barons doing? Because I don't believe that Australia has any barons. We only have... we don't really have anything, really. I mean, not in the sense that we have people just ruling over particular parcels of land or anything like that. Well, as far as I know, I mean, we do have the odd little person that comes here and there and just pretends to be important, but really no one cares besides just going, oh yeah, there's the king, there's the queen, done. Maple leaf cream filled cookies. Maple leaf cream filled cookies. Wait, I had to read that again. Maple leaf cream filled cookies. That sounds weird. Is it syrup or is it maple leaf? Oh, maple leaf cream-filled cookies, not maple leaf cream-filled cookies. It just depends where you put the apostrophe. If it was maple leaf cream-filled cookies, but no, it's maple leaf cream-filled cookies. That definitely makes a lot more sense. I was going, how do you take the maple leaf? I get the syrup, but how do you take the maple leaf? And what are you doing to the maple leaf to just make it into a cream to then put it in a cookie? But this, I can certainly understand the jump that it was taken to get there. I can only imagine they taste like maple, but is the cream also maple? Is it? Oh, I have so many questions. I've never seen them before.
What is the most friendly town?
Ooh.
Fredericton, the capital of NB, once got awarded the friendliest town in Canada.
Wow,
that was a few
actually
years
not
back,
even.
so I'm not sure if it still counts.
Cats in my books.
What are Canadians' thoughts on the Canadian clothing store Roots? Have several shirts from there and it reminds me of American Eagle, only Canadian. West Coast Canadian here. I personally don't own a single item from Roots except a backpack, and honestly I wouldn't consider it a Canadian American Eagle, but that's just one Canadian's opinion.
I've never heard
Do
of
you all
either.
apologize as much as memes show you guys do? Yes, sorry about that. Headed to the Winter Carnival in February. What should I expect? Best layers for the weather? My huge tip about Carnival is to dress very warmly.
Yep.
Quebec gets the coldest in January to February.
Yeah.
Do you wear your shoes indoors?
Oh.
No, but in elementary school we have indoor and outdoor shoes.
Wow. That seems like, from a teacher's perspective, a massive hassle to deal with. No, thank you. Indoor and outdoor shoes. That just... Nah, I get if people want to make it in their home choice, that's fine, but at school and at work, maybe, I don't know, that just seems like such a hassle. Especially as we are talking about having cold weather, you know, you get your foot and your sock and your shoe and everything nice and warm, and then you have to swap out of that. I mean, yes, you're not swapping your sock, and so you're not losing all your warmth, but it's definitely going to make a difference. I can understand if the entire thing and it's cold and wet, and sure, change your shoes and don't take them inside, but just changing it just because, that seems, like I said, that's a hassle that I'm not dealing with, no way.
Are you even real? Descott said I think, therefore I am. So really, you cannot prove the existence of anyone but yourself.
Yes, good.
French
Just like
Canadians, what makes your accent different from Metropolitan French?
Oh.
French Canadians have different and older pronunciations than European French.
I can certainly understand why that would be the case, but I certainly also know that my ear would not be able to tell the difference, I don't believe. I have heard a few different clips here and that all just sounds like, oh my goodness, it's all French to me. But no, surprisingly enough to me, this video did actually bring about a whole bundle of questions and points and even answers to things that I never even thought of before, never even heard of before, and so many different things, even down to the fact that, is Canada actually a nice place, or is it just because they're compared to the USA? And so to that I say, come on Canada, you have to, well, for one, prove to us that you're actually real, similarly to Australia, but two, just prove to us that you are actually the reigning king and you are Mr. Nice Guy. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm just finally going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then make sure to go check out my other ones. Also, make sure to go check out this video down in the description below, or hey, maybe you even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.